YouTube, how are we doing? This is an all you need for leg day post. So we're kicking this off with the single leg seated hamstring curl. We want a slight forward lean so we do get a little bit of a stretch around the hip, so the proximal hamstring attachments, and so that might get us a little bit more growth. And so generally speaking, we can warm up, do a couple of feeder sets to get into this, and then we're going to hit two working sets of single leg work. Now, given that we are doing single leg, we do want to have a little bit of rest and recovery between sides so that we can just dissipate any central nervous system fatigue. So don't go straight into your other side set. Do it when you feel ready. So again, I only took about 20 seconds there, but that's more than enough rest for me to match the reps on both sides. Now, we want a bit of a controlled eccentric on this one. It doesn't have to be super slow, and we can get a few varieties in as well where we can come up on two legs and go down on one, so we get a bit more of a concentric focus in a unilateral pattern. So you can definitely mess around with this one, but kick off the session with this, and then you can flip over if you have got the leg extension leg curl combo. Flick over to your leg extension. We want to be putting the seat back on this one, so we want a little bit more lean so we can get a little bit more hip extension, so we target the rec fem a little bit more. But also, we're sticking with the unilateral theme in today's session, so getting a little bit more activation towards the target muscle group, which is the quads. But because we're in that hip extended position, we are going to get the rec fem in there a lot more effectively than we would in our kind of traditional squat patterns and things like that. So make sure that you are leaning back as far as you can. It doesn't have to be perfect, and if the seat doesn't allow you to be that far lean back, we just want to avoid being really hip flexed and being in a more forward trunk position. And sticking with the typical themes of today's session, two working sets is all we need. Take them to failure. If you're running the stack, you might need a gym pin, you might need to find a heavier leg extension, but generally speaking, for single leg, you should be okay. And then we paired this session because we hit a knee flexion dominant pattern at the start. Now we want a hip flexion dominant pattern, so a hip hinge, to target the hamstrings in a slightly different lengthened position. So that's where we're doing a RDL or stiff leg deadlift in the Smith machine. Depends on what you want to classify it there. There's very minimal knee bend, so we'll probably call it a stiff leg. Now you'll notice I am using straps here because grip can be a limiting factor, especially for any of these more horizontal type pulls. So definitely use grip wraps so that your grip isn't the limiting factor there. But again, two sets, take them to failure, have a controlled eccentric, be explosive on the concentric, and you're going to get significant hamstring growth. Now, moving on, we are hitting dumbbell rear foot elevated split squat, and this is arguably the most taxing exercise of this whole program, and so that's why we've put this right in the middle, as it's our last more quad focused pattern of the day before we then hit some accessory work. And you'll notice again, I am using straps again, so we don't want our grip to be the limiting factor here. So sometimes in these farmer carry dumbbell positions, grip will let you down before your quads or glutes fatigue, and so we want to avoid that. Now we are using this fairly high rep range here because we are limited in terms of the dumbbells that we've got, but essentially a little bit more of a knee dominant pattern here. We're not trying to actively hinge forward and get it to be a little bit more glute, and you'll see that we're kind of going down and backwards with that back knee. So that generally allows us to get a bit more of a targeted quad strategy in this exercise. And again, we want to hit these two sets to failure, go all the way to failure, and then we move into our next exercise. And so we got the hard stuff out of the way, so now for the more easy stuff. This is a makeshift glute medius type abduction. So we can use the cable stack. We use our left arm here to hold onto the cable stack for a little bit of added stability, and we're just taking that leg out as far as we can in a controlled manner. Again, using the cuff around the ankle, so just placed slightly above the ankle. So this is one where, again, you can do various different positions, you can work at different joint angles, you can do different loads and things like that. But generally speaking, we should be able to get through this after that quad fatigue of the rear foot elevated split squat. So that kind of metabolic fatigue that we accumulated shouldn't be too much. And then we finish off the session nice and simply, hit some calves, So we want to really focus in the lengthened position, so the bottom or the deficit. So we're getting maximal dorsiflexion and then recruiting our plantar flexors where they are able to create the highest activation level. So that's why we're kind of in here. Now, it is a little bit of a tricky one with lifting shoes because there isn't much compliance in the soles. So next time I do this, I'll probably switch to my sneakers. And then essentially we kind of just do a bit of a mechanical drop set here just because we were running low on time. But basically we want to be in a knee extended position and we want to hit it in a deficit, and that's how you grow your calves.